This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, first of all, Lenore, it's wonderful to have you here. Great to have you aboard. Everyone's great to have aboard, but we've missed Lenore for a little while. So wonderful to have you back over here. Good and good. I got the audio working now. Sorry about that, Janet and Craig from before. So today's topic, and a thanks to a Rabbi Giel student who did a wonderful job. Isn't that a great name for a rabbi? Right? A lot better than Ciner or Ciner even, right? Anyhow, moving along. So he did a great job of gathering a lot of very important sources. So I like to express my appreciation to him for that. So the topic is what we read in the parsha last week, which was an eye for an eye, ayin tachat ayin, an eye for an eye. And we know that that does not mean literally an eye for an eye. Rather, what do we do instead? We do monetary restitution, value. In fact, if a person causes damage to another person, there are 5 different categories of payment that must be assessed. Nezek, tsar, ripoy, shevetz, boshet. Nezek is the damage. Tsar is the pain. Ripoy is the medical bills. Sheves is the loss of wages. Boshes is the humiliation, embarrassment that the person might have undergone. So is this a rabbinic institution that we have this harsh God of the Bible, and along come the rabbis and try to want to soften the blow a little bit, so they are going against the Torah and saying that no, it only means monetary restitution? Or is that in fact what the Torah always had in mind? And we're going to see from the context, from the language, and from outside sources and logic. Now, when I say outside sources, outside points from the Torah, that it's got to be that is what the Torah was saying all along. And then, of course, we'll need to understand, so then why did the Torah couch it in the terms of an eye for an eye, which can easily be misunderstood, if in fact it always meant to give this monetary restitution? So let's look at the context, right? And that is always so crucially important. When you want to understand the Torah, you want to understand Tanakh, we need to look at the context. Because if you take something out of context and view it just in and of itself, it can easily be and often is misconstrued in a very serious manner. So let's go to Shmot 21:18 to 25. Those of you who are online, I'm not going to see you. So if you want to speak up, feel free to, but I want to move this for you so you can see where we are. Okay. The pasuk says famously, "V'chi rivun anashim." If 2 men are fighting, "V'hika ish et re'ehu," and one strikes the other, "Be'even," with a stone, "O be'egrof," or a fist, "V'lo yamut," and the person does not die. If the person dies, we're moving into a whole capital case. We're not discussing that over here. V'nafal l'mishkav, but what happened? The person was bedridden, right? He was pretty incapacitated by this encounter. Im yakum, if he will get up, v'hitalech b'chutz al mishanto, and he will be able to walk outside on his staff, meaning that he didn't die immediately, nor did he die from this assault. We're talking over here about an assault, right? We're mentioning a stone. We're mentioning a fist. That's what was used in this assault. As long as he survives this, vinika ha-makeh, the assailant will be cleansed from a capital case against him. However, rak shivto yitain v'rapo yirapeh. But, and here's where we learn out 2 of the 5 obligations that I mentioned earlier. Rak shivto yitain, he'll need to pay for his loss of wages, his shevet. Virapo yirapeh, and he must also be healed properly. So here are 2 of the obligations, 2 of the monetary obligations that are incurred when a person deliberately assaults someone else and causes damage. Vichi, and I skipped 2 verses here because they deal with damages to a slave. We're not going into that. Vichi natsu anashim, and when 2 men are fighting, v'nakfu isha hara, and one of them ends up hitting an isha hara, a pregnant woman. V'yatsu yaladeha, and she loses her children. She loses the fetuses. She miscarries as a result of this. V'lo yiyeh ason, but there is no fatality there. Okay, interesting. There's another Lunch&Learn that we've done. We could revisit it in the future. We see from here the Torah does not consider taking an abortion, so to speak, taking the life of a fetus as murder. Right? It's something that we are very, very hesitant to do only in very specific situations, but it's not tantamount to murder because we say v'lo yason. There was not a fatality, meaning even though she lost the embryos, but she is alive. Anosh yanesh. So then he will be punished monetarily. Kasher yashit alav bala isha v'natan b'flilim, as it will be assessed by the husband, etc., and then the judges will decide the amount that needs to be paid. The im ason yihiyeh, but if it'll be an ason, if there will be a fatality, right? If she dies as a result of that, then it's a soul for a soul. Now, it's not, there's a machloket, a dispute here. If in this case he was trying to hit Mr. A and end up hitting Mrs. B or Mrs. A and she died, is there a capital punishment for that or not? Okay, so that there is a machloket about. However, then it goes on to say ayin tachat ayin, an eye tachat, translated an eye for an eye, chain tachat chain, a tooth for a tooth, yad tachat yad, a hand for a hand, regel tachat regel, a foot for a foot, kavia tachat kavia, a burn for a burn, petza tachat petza, a wound for a wound, chabura tachat chabura, a bruise for a bruise. Now, let's look at this structure over here, okay, which we have here on the chart. Bodily harm inflicted by man on his fellow. Verses 18 to 19 was intentional damage, right? That was the stone or the fist. What does he need to do? He pays monetary punishment. Okay? Verses 22 to 25, 2 guys are fighting, and he ends up hitting the pregnant woman, not killing her, but causing damage to her. That was accidental damage. So if the Torah just told me that for deliberate damage, stone, fist, what happens to me? Payment. Can it possibly be that for accidental damage, which is what we're discussing now, can it possibly be we take out the guy's eye or his hand? Does that make any sense whatsoever within the context of what we are discussing over here? I'm sorry? It's got to be monetary compensation. It makes no sense whatsoever to say that if I deliberately maim someone, I pay. I accidentally maim someone, I get maimed. right? It makes no sense whatsoever. Now, go a little bit further. So let's look at the wording. We translate it as an eye for an eye, ayin tachat ayin. What does tachat actually mean? Literally under or in place of. So let's see other contexts when the Torah, scripture, either the Torah or Navi, uses the term tachat. V'ata, Breshit 44:33. This is the beginning of Vayigash. The brothers have come to Yosef in order to get food. Yosef, at that point, sends them back. This is the second time they came. Sends them back with Binyamin. But he's afraid for Binyamin's welfare. He knows how the brothers treated the son of Rachel. He's afraid how they might be treating Binyamin, the other son of Rachel. So he has his goblet planted in Benjamin's sack. And then they all come back. And he wants to take Benjamin as a slave. Not really, but he wants to see how do the brothers really feel about Binyamin. So whereas they sold Yosef into slavery, here he's serving it to them on a silver platter. You don't have to do anything at all. Binyamin has been caught, and I will take him as a slave. How are you guys going to react to that? And we know that Yehuda, Judah, reacted very, very heroically. And what did he say? He said, it will break the heart of our father if we come back without Binyamin. Our father, our aged father, will die from that. V'ata, 44:33, Bereshit, Hebrew and English. Yeshev na avdecha, let your servant, myself, Yehuda speaking, let I, your servant, remain tachat hana'ar, in the place of the lad. Eved ladoni, I will be the slave to my master, to you, Joseph, though he did not yet know it was Joseph. V'hana'ar ya'al im echav, and let the lad go back with his father. So over here, what does tachat mean? In the place of. In being a slave, I will be a slave. Taking out the I of the perpetrator does nothing to fill the place, the socket, if you will, of the I that was destroyed, that was maimed. Tachat means something will come in the place of that. The perpetrator's eye does not come in the place of that. What can come in the place of that? What's the best we can do to come in the place of that? Monetary compensation for that which was lost. Another example. This is the beginning of Kings. This is when David HaMelech, King David, is on his last legs, and one of his sons, Adoniyahu, has aspiring to claim the throne. And Natan Hanavi, Nathan the prophet, Bathsheba, and Bathsheba, the mother of Shlomo, come to speak to David, to ask him what's going on, to tell him what's going on, and to make sure that he directs the throne towards Shlomo. And David says to them, Ki kasher nishbati lach b'Hashem Elokei Yisroel lemor, as I swore to you previously, in the name of God, the God of Israel, saying, Ki Shlomo b'nei, that Solomon, your son, yimloch acharai, he will reign after me, v'hu yeshev al kis'i tachtai, and he will sit on my throne. What's tachtai? In my place, in my stead. As I swore to you long ago when we had this discussion, Kain Eseh biyom hazeh. That's exactly what I'm going to be doing hayom hazeh, right now, today. So once again, what do we see? Once again, what do we see? We see that tachat means in the place of. So when we look at the verses in Shemot, there are two places in Exodus and Leviticus, Shemot and Vayikra, two places where we have this ayin tachat ayin. Next, in Shemot, if the deliberate maiming results in a monetary payment, then certainly accidental cannot result in maiming, but must result in monetary compensation. Again, we'll have to come back to, so why was it couched in these terms? Furthermore, the word tachat is not an eye for an eye, it's an eye in the place of an eye. Meaning, how can we replace that eye with an eye, meaning with the value of an eye? That is how we can do it. Let's go to the second place in the Torah where this is mentioned. That's in Vayikra 24:17-20. The ish kiyake kol nefesh adam. If a person kills another human being, mot yumat, capital punishment. That person shall be put to death. Umake nefesh behema. If one kills an animal, yishalmena, he'll need to pay. Nefesh tachat nefesh, life for life, but there clearly means payment. Here we go. The ish ki yitain mum ba'amito. And if one party maims another, kasher asa kain ya'aseh or ye'aseh lo. Ye'aseh. As was done, that is what ye'aseh lo. That is what shall be done to him. Oh, so that sounds a little bit problematic. That sounds pretty literal. Shever tachas shever, fracture for fracture. Ayin tachas ayin, eye for eye. Shein tachas shein, tooth for tooth. Kasher yitain mum ba'adam, when a injury was inflicted on a person, kain yinatain bo. Yinatain. What is yinatain? What's natan? To give. Kain yinatain bo. That is what shall be given. Now, before we go to the kasher asa, kain yinatain bo. Up in Shemot, again, the second line on the first on the top of the page there, we see rak shivto yitain v'rapo yirapeh on the very top over here of an eye for an eye, right? Second line over there, kasher rak shivto yitain. What did yitain mean? Monetary payment. So we saw in the previous time that the Torah discussed this, when it used the term natan, latate, notain, yitain, yinatain, what did it mean? It meant monetary payment. So to over here, when it says kain, yinatain, bo, so we see that that means monetary. What do we do with kasher asa, kain ye ase lo? As was done, shall be done to him. Let's see where else in Scripture we have that term. And that is, you turn the page to Shoftim, right? Judges, Shoftim 15:11. This is discussing Shimshon, Samson. Leading up to this pasuk, so Samson was a provocateur, right? Meaning the Plishtim were in a very strong position over the children of Israel at that time. If it would have been an all-out battle, then we would have been defeated handily. So Shimshon needed to act as a renegade, as an outlaw, and therefore we cannot be blamed for his behavior, right? He cast himself as this renegade outsider out of control, and therefore would not be punished by the Plishtim, held accountable, I should say, by the Plishtim for his behavior. So what happened was Shimshon came back home and they had given away his wife to someone else. Shimshon was unpleased. He therefore went and he burned down all of their fields. They came to the leaders of the Yudim, of the Jews, and they said, "Hey, this Shimshon, he's out of control, right?" So the Plishtim said, "Bring us Shimshon. You Jewish leaders, you bring us Shimshon." So that's what we pick up in Shoftim 15:11. Vayerdu shloshet alafim ish me Yehuda. 3,000 men from Judah went down El Seif Sela Etam, to the cave of the rock of Etam. Vayomer li Shimshon, they said to Shimshon, Halo yadata, don't you realize? Ki moshlim banu plishtim, the plishtim, they rule over us. Umazot asita lanu, what is it that you have done to us? Why have you done this to us? Right? You burned their fields. It's causing tremendous anger towards us. Who knows where this will go? Vayomer lehem, he answered to them, Kasher asu li, kain asiti lahem. As they did to me, that's what I did to them. Now, we see when scripture says, Kasher asa kain yasu, does it necessarily mean literally? It does not. They took away his wife. He didn't go and take away their wives. He burned their fields. They didn't go and burn his fields. But as they did to me, as they did something to me, Kain asiti lahem, I did something to them. But it's not limited to exactly what they did, I did, exactly what I did, they did. They did, I did. But it's not a literal tit for tat, as we say, exactly what they did, I did. So too, we'll come to you in a second, Cheryl. So too, kasher asa kain yeaselo. So too, as he did to him, that's right. He did something to him. What did he do to him? He maimed him. Kain yasalo. Something must be done to him. What is that must be done to him? We saw from the context before in Exodus, in Shemot, that again, if deliberate is monetary payment, accidental cannot be any more than monetary payment. So as he did to him, will be done to him. Something was done to him. He maimed him. Something will be done to him, which is the monetary payments. Yes, Cheryl.
I was kind of thinking that the whole episode of Dina and the brothers Shimon and Levi, who wiped out all the men.
Correct. I'm not sure if I have to look. I don't have it in my head clearly. If the terms were, if the term used there was as they did, we did. I'm not sure.
That's a very good point, though, Sharon.
Yeah, it's a very good parallel. We just have to check the wording there, right? And if we have that wording there the same, then that's very good. That'll be another example that they kidnapped, violated Dinah, and we didn't go and kidnap and violate their wives. I remember one of I forget his name now. He's a great journalist, a British journalist who's very pro-Israel.
Douglas Murray?
Douglas Murray, thank you. And soon after the horrors of October 7th, when people are and Israel started the attack, and people talking about proportionality, he said, "Oh, proportionality means that we need to go there and behead children and rape women. That's not proportionality means. Yes, Janet.
Sorry. It seems like it's based on a spurious premise, though, because an eye is priceless. There is, you said based on the value of an eye, is what you said. But there is, you can't value an eye. Or,
So the Gemara, yes. How do you value an eye? So the Gemara, I mentioned before that there are five different matrices when it comes to determining payment. Five different factors are taken into account, and the nezek, the damage, is if a person were being sold as a slave. Then what is the value of one with an eye and without an eye? Right? You're right. It's priceless, but we have to do our best, right? And removing the person's eye is clearly not going to help in terms of any restitution, any restoration. And again, I don't think you were here from the very beginning, but it first spoke about you heard that. So a deliberate is monetary. This can only be monetary. How do we price it? We do our best to price it. There's not much more that we can do. Yes, Cheryl.
So this also reminds me of this very recent incident where there was a rally. A Jewish man was just standing there with an Israeli flag.
Yeah.
And some Arab came over and killed him.
Yeah.
Right then and there.
Yeah, he didn't kill him right then and there, but he hit him really hard enough and he died from his wounds. Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever happened with that?
Yeah.
Probably
I don't know. I don't think
and
so.
after they investigated, he was charged with manslaughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
The other
Okay.
thing that is troubling
Yes.
is we always say that Torah doesn't waste words.
Okay, so we'll have to come to why.
And they're very specific about the monetary damages, and then they list.
So the Gemara goes through with that. The burn is to let you know, right? There are five different categories. And it's letting you know, even if this category does not apply, this one does, right? The kaviyah, there's no, right? If a person, got on his nail, right? So that's not going to cause a nezek, right? He's not devalued now, right? In terms of that, but there is tsar, there is pain. So that's the Gemara actually works through each of these and why they're necessary. Yeah.
But it's just like the monetary ahead of the sukkim are specific. An eye, it's very specific. An eye in place of an eye, an eye.
So what are you saying?
It seems like that there's something's been missed, like that.
Again, from the context, I think it makes no sense. I think you'll agree. It makes no sense whatsoever for the Torah to say deliberately maiming somebody, payment. Accidental maiming, okay.
True, but
So therefore, so the Gemara discusses, the Gemara works through what we learn from each of these.
It seems like in place of someone who is a guide for vision, like a seeing eye dog or something, or a servant who helps.
Yes, doctor.
I thought that if there was an accidental killing, the person would go to a city of refuge.
That's correct. We'll come to killing, right? It's a city of refuge. But let's say I was shooting for this guy and end up hitting someone else. So that's already not a city of refuge, and that's where we had the machloket, the dispute that I mentioned earlier, in terms of how we would view that. Okay.
In a city of refuge, does the person pay reparations?
No.
So it just takes off and goes to the city of refuge.
He's
off the hook.
Well, if he leaves the city of refuge we'll see in a moment, before the death of the Kohen Gadol, then he is fair game. Right? He's got a little target on his forehead, that little red light. All of a sudden it comes up on him. Okay, so those are the two parshiot themselves that discuss this. And from those two parshas, so in the first parsha, it's clear that it does not mean literal maiming of the person's eye. Let's look elsewhere in the Torah. That's Bamidbar 35:31. Bring up what Dr. Raymond just brought up. The pasuk there says, Lo tikhu kofer lenefesh rotzeach. If a person is a murderer, for that there's a capital punishment. Lo tikhu kofer. Do not take ransom for a nefesh rotzeach. Asher hu rasha lamut. Right? Who is guilty of a capital crime. Kimot yumat. Rather, he must receive that capital punishment. Right? So I might have thought that there would be ransom. We could take a monetary payment for that. No, you cannot. Next pasuk. What Dr. Raymond brought up. Let's say someone killed accidentally. His din, the judgment on him is he goes to a city of refuge. Well, lo tichu kofer lanus. Do not take ransom payment in lieu of a flight to having to run to the city of refuge. Rather, lashuv lashevet ba'aretz an mota kohen. He must return, right, to allow him to return to his land before the death of the kohen. No, you cannot take monetary payment for that. Now, if for a damage to someone, there is not monetary payment, but rather the person loses their eye, would the Torah need to tell me, and don't take money for a murderer? Don't take money to release a manslaughter, right? Not deliberate death or deliberate death. It must be that for maiming, there is monetary payment. And therefore I might have thought, okay, so then maybe for a murderer there also is. No, there's not. Okay, for a murderer not, but maybe for the city of refuge guy there is. No, there's not. So there's only a need to tell me, that there will not be a monetary payment to acquit someone from murder or from manslaughter if there is monetary payment when a life has not been taken. And one last point. Well, not necessarily, but and one more thing. Okay. In Vayikra 24, that's what we were quoting before, where we had all of these psukim, the fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, etc. Two psukim later, it says, Vayikra 24:22, Mishpat echad yelachem. There's got to be one standard for you, kager ke'ezrach yeh kini Hashem Elokechem. I am Hashem, your God. There is one mishpat for everyone. Now, if it were to mean literal, and the Gemara goes through this, let's say the guy who had his eye knocked out, both eyes knocked out, had 20/20 vision. And let's say the guy who knocked out his eye has vision like mine, not quite as acute, we'll say, generously, right? Is that proper judgment? Is that going to be getting equal for equal? Is that mishpat echad? Is that one judgment? Now, right, who knows? Certainly in biblical times, you take out a guy's eye, chances are there might be some other health issues that might accompany that. Is there any way of measuring that? Right, there certainly is not. But to me, the context is what's so clear from the very, very first one. The Vilna Gaon points out something very interesting. Ayin tachat ayin. Tachat literally means, like Dov said before, what does tachat literally mean? Under. So let's look at the word ayin. And let's see what is tachat ayin. I have it over here, Dov. What is underneath the ayin? Okay, so in the Aleph Bet, Which letter is under? Which letter follows the ayin? The letter pei. Which letter follows the letter yud? The letter chaf. Which letter follows the letter nun? Samach. Those three letters, pei, chaf, samach, or pei, chaf, samach, or chaf, samach, pei, right, is the word kesef. So the word for an ayin, what do you pay? You pay that which is tachat ayin. I'm not saying that's what we're basing it on, but the Torah is incredible, right, in that which we find over here. Okay, so then the question that does remain is,
You could be interpreting that on your visage, on your pay, your panim, that underneath is like the bridge of your nose or your cheeks.
no one's saying to knock out your nose or your cheeks.
No, I know, but how do they get that it's the Aleph Bet? That seems like just to pull out a whole cloth.
That's a Vilna Gaon. Again, we're not basing halacha on this, but it is fascinating that the Torah uses the word tachat, and in the Aleph Bet, that's how it works out. Okay, so then the question remains, so why didn't the Torah just say that? Why didn't the Torah just say that? Any ideas out there, my friends? It would be too easy. Okay. I wouldn't have we wouldn't have a lunch and learn. Right? I have to find something else to talk about.
Maybe to stress the severity of the naming.
Okay. That's true. That's true. I need a job. Hey, someone's got to pay the mortgage, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah, your sideways sign says we'll work for Torah.
So Janet said something that actually, not that last comment, but the one before that actually has a lot to it. Okay. Had the Torah said payment, so let's say I'm a very wealthy guy, and I really don't like this person. Or, something? This person gave me a dirty look. Or I don't like the way this guy looked at my wife. Hey, but I look in the Torah. All right, what's it going to cost me? $200K, $300K, $500K for a person who has a sign. We'll teach Torah for a coffee. I can afford that. A person might say, "Hey, I'm in. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. For me, it's worth the $100,000, the $200K, to knock out that guy's eye, right? Louis, take care of him, right? Hey, so had the Torah said that, then a person might say, hey, okay, I'm in. Or a person might say, not so terrible. I reimbursed him. I paid him back. So the Torah is writing it in terms that you have to recognize just how grievous, just how horrific, what horrific damage you have caused, to the point that if you would have your own eye taken out, then you would appreciate what you've done. And really, that's what midin shamayim, from the laws, from the heavenly laws, that's really what you probably deserve. But down here in this world, right, we have a general policy. The pasuk says, "V'hitzilu ha'eda." The congregation, the Beit Din, needs to do what they can to save a person's life. Meaning, every court system wants to be dead on, get it just right. But every court system realizes they can't get it just right. So they have to decide, are we going to lean left and run the risk of acquitting someone who is guilty? Or are we going to lean right and run the risk of convicting someone who is innocent? The Torah tells us, v'hitzilu ha'eda. When it comes to life and death matters, we lean left. V'hitzilu ha'eda. And the congregation, the Beit Din, should save that person's life. Why is that? Because we have the great safety net in the sky. And even if a person goes, as they say, innocently to the grave, at that point, it's not over. That's where it begins. And therefore, no one is getting away with anything. If we wrongfully kill someone who's innocent, then we've got that grievous error on our heads. If we acquit someone based on the parameters the Torah gives us who actually is guilty, don't worry. God's got it covered. It'll all be taken care of. So to over here, it could very well be that min hashamayim, the person deserves more. And we'll leave that to God. Down here in this world, as we mentioned before, it's got to be mishpat echad. Our trying to do just right can end up doing a lot more than that. Who knows what this could lead to if we try to take out the person's eye. But the Torah writes it in the context of an eye, tachat eye, fracture for fracture, etc., for etc., in order that we realize that this is not a monetary thing that I can make a monetary call. I could call my financial consultant, say, hey, can I handle this? Yeah, you can handle it. It's not going to affect my retirement. No, you got plenty to give. Okay, Louis, take care of him. And we have to realize what is at stake over here and what a person actually deserves if they have done this to someone else.
So when calculating money damages, an eye for an eye. If it's the same when a person is 20 years old or a person is 80 years old, it's the same monetary value?
No. We say if this person, so there are 5 different payments that need to go into effect over here. First one is the nezek, the actual damage that was done. How can we assess that? Right, an eye is priceless. What would a person pay to keep their eyesight? Basically, whatever they've got, right? So the only way that we can assess that is if this person, his age, his stage, his abilities, was a slave. How much would he fetch on the market with vision and without vision? That's the nezek. Then there's the tsar. How much pain did the person go through? How do we assess that? The Mishnah says, well, let's say a person's in Saudi Arabia and he was caught stealing. They still chop off the hand for that? I know they used to, right? Then they chop off his hand. And they're going to be doing it without any painkillers involved. How much would the person pay on the side to have him slip some painkillers, right? That's the tsar. Ripoy, that is the medical expenses. Shevet, that is the loss of wages. Not just the loss of wages during the time that he is incapacitated, but now this person was a diamond cutter. Right? Now he's going to be pumping gas, whatever it is that he'll be doing, right? So there's the lost wages, the shevet. There's the boshet. The boshet is the humiliation that the person endured during that encounter. Okay? So these are all our best way of assessing something which actually is priceless. But in any case of an assault, those are the 5 categories that we take into account. But once again, from the context and from the actual words, the tacha, not just the Vilna Gaon's tacha meaning kesef, but tacha means in the place of, right? And therefore, it is very clear that our sages were not coming to soften the tone of this of this Torah of ours, of this God of ours, but that's always what was meant. But it was written in the way that it's written for us to appreciate the severity and not to take it lightly. You know, it's interesting. The Gemara also points out, even in the case where I fully compensated the person, I still need their forgiveness, right? You know, the compensation at best gets them back to where they were at best, if it does, right? But the pain that but the emotional pain, right? You still need to beg forgiveness for that. Yes, Mr. Dove.
Okay, two cases I want to bring up. In Sodom, if you hit somebody, the person who got hit had to pay the person who hit
Right,
him.
correct. That was the upside down system in stone. Yeah.
Right? And second case, if you have a slave and you knock out his eye, the payment is he's free.
An Edek Kanani, right? That's correct. A Canaanite slave.
Yeah.
That is correct. Okay. Good, everybody. Good seeing everybody. Okay. And a good day and a good Erev Shabbos to everybody. Yes, Janet.
Is the Nezek category the same as the Nezek that the Torah mentions or brings forward in discussion of Tzara'at when the Kohen is examining the skins?
That's Nega. It's a different word, I think. That's Nega, not Nezek. I don't think we use the term Nezek by Tzorat. To the best of my recollection, we don't use the term Nezek by Tzorat. Yeah, that's the best of my recollection. Okay. Grace, I don't know if that's you, Grace, or if that is Steve, but either way, good having you on. And Craig, good having you on also.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's me. He's in a meeting, but I wanted to listen in. Thank
Great.
you.
And Grace, we love having Steve here every morning. He strengthens
Oh,
our
I'm
meeting.
glad. I'm
And
glad.
he's
I'm glad he's
and he
finally
asks good
meeting
questions
you.
during the shiur, during the
Yeah,
Daf Yomi. He's
he's
good.
brilliant. He's a good
He
guy.
keeps me on my toes, which is good. Okay. Be well.
Be well.
Okay.
Do you need this back?
I don't